in the seriousness of, and can y'all hear that and hear me better now? When you think about the seriousness of it, like Rodney mentioned in his prayer, I mean, this isn't a light thing that we do, and worship to God, and you look back at the people and the things that God wanted them to know, wanted them to do. And to follow the pattern, and we follow a pattern. God doesn't just throw things out and they just, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. No, there's a pattern and there's a purpose, and it's just amazing when we're going to be looking back, going through here. We're looking at the priest's clothing, and in every detail. There's purpose, there's a pattern, there's, it's a very serious matter. And as we mentioned, I think last time, you read in there, do this lest you die, that kind of thing. This isn't a light matter. And so it's something very serious. But I think it helps us to understand our situation today and just how blessed we are in the pattern, if you will, that we have. One of the things, I'll go ahead and mention this, the quarter's quickly drawing to a close. So I think counting today, have 6 more, if you count today, 6 more class periods. October the 1st is the last class, and then I think October the 5th is when the new quarter starts. So just letting y'all know, it's passing very quickly. And looking at the picture, and oh, good, yeah. I guess y'all are looking at what I've got on the screen here. Yeah, the priest there, and you see that, and we talked about the linen undergarment, the coat, the robe, the ephod, and now to the breastplate. And one of the things about the breastplate, and I actually wanted to go ahead. Let's see. And that's in Exodus 28. But I'll go ahead and read what Bob has to say about the breastplate. And like I say, it's one of the most important things. All of it's important. Don't get me wrong. But as Bob points out here in his material, the breastplate was the most important part of the high priest's attire. It is called the breastplate of judgment. Aaron was to wear it as he went in and out before the Lord. It was made of the same mingled colors as the ephod, gold, blue, purple, and scarlet, the work of a skillful workman. The fabric of the breastplate formed a perfect 9-inch square, a span, I guess that's how it's mentioned, but that'd be a 9-inch square, as we would, I guess, think of it. And it was folded double to form a pocket, which were kept the Urim and Thummim. 4 rows of 3 precious stones, each were set in gold filigree upon the breastplate. Engraved upon these 12 stones were the names of the 12 tribes. Thus Aaron bore the names of the children of Israel upon his heart when he went into the holy place for a memorial before the Lord continually. And so, and so the thing, and I think we'd actually read this next slide. I think we'd actually gone through and read this slide. But this is from Exodus 28, the breastplate of judgment in skilled work, squared and doubled, expand its length in a span, believed to be about 9 inches square, had the 4 rows of stones and the various stones there. And these shall be the 12 stones with their names according to the names of the sons of Israel. They shall be like signets, each engraved with its name for the 12 tribes. And so then you get to this one, and you actually get to see, how it possibly looked. Again, we don't know. And thinking about this breastplate, one of the things from Scripture, do we wear a breastplate? In a sense, I think we do. I've got a couple of passages. One of the things from Isaiah, and then I think this is a messianic verse here, messianic, Isaiah 59, and I was just going to touch on this, and I'll pick up in verse 14, and then the wickedness of Israel, and here's how things were. Justice is turned back and righteousness stands afar off. This is verse 14 of Isaiah 59. Righteousness stands afar off, for truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. So truth fails, and he who departs from evil makes himself a prey. And notice, now he's going to talk about the Redeemer, the one, and I think like a messianic. Then the Lord saw it, and it displeased him, and there was no justice. He saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore, his own arm brought salvation for him, and his own righteousness, it sustained him. Notice verse 17. For he put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation on his head. You know, that idea, that the breastplate of righteousness. And you turn over to Ephesians. Ephesians, again, you know, this idea, you know, that we have a breastplate. It's talking about taking on the whole armor of God. And I'll pick up in verse 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, and notice this, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace, above all taking the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And so, you know, this idea, you know, breastplate, you know, you think about that, and you know, the breastplate has always been significant. If you go back ancient warfare, you know, why would you wear a breastplate? Why would you put on a breastplate, if you will? We'll call it a breastplate. Why would you do that? You're going into battle. What's the significance of that? Yes, Mike. Yeah, your heart, your lungs, your organs there, you need that protection. And so, you know, the breastplate, plus, you know, symbolically here, you know, the priest has it on. It's right there in front. It's that, you know, again, very, like I say, symbolic. And it's going to have those stones on it. It's going to be right there, so for all to see. And I'll go ahead and go to this next. Whenever Aaron goes into the holy place, he will be carrying the names of the sons of Israel over his heart as a constant reminder in the Lord's presence. He must do this by wearing the breastplate for decision making. And I'll go ahead and finish up here. So again, the breastplate, and I don't want to overdo it, but it has its significance. You know, whether you're talking warfare, whether you're talking about the garment that the high priest wore. You know, again, there's significance there, and there's importance. Two golden chains were fastened to resemble cords. These chains were fastened to the rings attached to the upper end of the breastplate at each of the two corners. The other ends of the chains were fastened to the front part of the shoulder pieces, which held the onyx stones. And you remember he had the two stones on his shoulders there. Of the ephod, and that had the children of Israel on each side, and he bore them, as it were, on his shoulders. There were two other rings on the lower end of the breastplate, on the back next to the ephod, and this is Exodus 28:26, by which the breastplate was bound to rings on the ephod with a lace, a cord of blue, thus bound by chains at the top and a blue lace at the bottom. The breastplate was regarded as permanently bound to the ephod. So the way that it was attached and everything, it was like, you know, even though they were separate and they had been separate, they're joined, and it's like that. That's where the breastplate's going to be, and it's again regarded. You know, I guess think of it as regarded as permanently bound to the ephod. And you shall put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and Thummim, and they shall be over Aaron's heart when he goes before the Lord. It is uncertain what the Urim and Thummim were. The terms are used a few times in the Bible in various places. Exodus 28, obviously, Leviticus 8 and 8, Numbers 27, 21. Well, actually, I think there's a slide we're going to go over some of this. In Ezra and also Nehemiah. The words themselves mean lights, Urim, and perfections, Thummim. They were some sort of device by which God could give a yes or no answer to a question. And I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Put the Urim and Thummim into the breastplate for decision making. They too will be over Aaron's heart when he comes into the Lord's presence. In this way, whenever he's in the Lord's presence, Aaron will always be carrying over his heart the means for determining the Lord's decisions for the Israelites. So in this breastplate, and it's made into a flap, and you got as a pocket. And this is what's going to go in there. Again, we don't know what they look like. It's supposed they could have been stones of different color. Well, I'll go ahead and... They were some sort of device by which God could give a yes or no answer to a question. So, think about that. You want to ask God a question. And does it amaze you, and I'll ask y'all this, does it amaze you going through their history that when important things came up, did they always seem to, jump to, hey, we need to know what God has to say on these matters? Did they always think, yes? Exactly, yeah. They went on their own, because they fooled them. Mm-hmm. Exactly, and so here God gives them a means for knowing, and as you point out, that was a situation where they should have, they could have, but they didn't. They went off the, these people are from a long way away, they're and they were fooled. And so the thing is, it just makes me wonder just how eager they were to, I would like to think that if we had a means today to know what God said, I would hope that we would be, it'd be something that we would routinely, I want to know what, on this particular matter or something like that, just saying. But I think you look through their history, and as Brother Jolly points out there, they surely could have used it then.
Make a substitute for that. Have you ever heard flipping a coin in the direction?
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing that happens today. It's not. It's certainly not of God.
No.
God is controlling the coin.
Hopefully, you only use it for things like, which restaurant are we going to eat in today? This one or that? No, nothing important. No, certainly not. But you're exactly right. And when you think about it, here's God giving them the means. If you want to know, this is something that you could that they could know. And as I say, let me go ahead and finish this. Let's see. Which God could give a yes or no answer to a question. Some have speculated that there were two stones of differing colors. To reach into the pocket, form the breastplate, and draw one out would mean yes, the other would mean no. By this means, the priest could inquire of God. In this capacity, the priest could almost be thought of as a prophet. And if you think about that, if God gives you an answer, it's the right answer. I mean, there's no question about it. It may be for this reason that David asked Zadok, one of the high priests in his day, aren't you a seer? And that's in 2 Samuel 15:27. And I think that's one of the things we may touch on. According to the law, the high priest, or there was one instance where David did, and we'll get to that in a minute. According to the law, the high priest stood as the one with the ultimate say-so in the case of a dispute about a detail in the law. When there was a dispute, the ones involved took the matter to the local Levitical judge who was supposed to know the law in detail. If he could not settle the matter, it was taken to the priest, and finally to the high priest. If one refused to listen to the judgment of the high priest, he was to be put to death. And if you look at Deuteronomy 17, chapter 17, and I guess we could turn over there. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 8 through 13. So here it is. You got a matter that needs to be settled. You take it to one of the Levitical judges. Can't come up with an answer. Go up to the next level, the priest. Now we're going to go to the high priest, and he's like their version of the Supreme Court. He's going to be the one who is going to completely settle the matter. If a matter arises which is too hard for you to judge between degrees or of guilt for bloodshed between one judgment or another, or between one punishment or another, matters of controversy within your gates, then you shall arise and go to the place which the Lord your God chooses, and you shall come to the priests, the Levites, and to the judge there in the days, and inquire of them. They shall pronounce upon them the sentence of judgment. You shall do according to the sentence which they pronounce upon you in that place which the Lord chooses. And you shall be careful to do according to all that they order you, according to the sentence of the law in which they instruct you, according to the judgments which they tell you, you shall do. You shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left from the sentence which they pronounce upon you. Now the man who acts presumptuously and will not heed the priest who stands to minister before the Lord your God, or the judge, that man shall die. So shall you put away the evil from Israel, and all the people shall hear and fear and no longer act presumptuously. That idea of, there was an absolute, there's no gray area, there's no iffy. It's like, this is the decision. And there are people who, obviously, well, that's not what I want to hear. And, back in that day, if you fought against the authority that God had in place, well, there was it wouldn't go well for you if they did what they were supposed to. And so in Numbers 27:21, and he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire for him by the judgment of the Urim before the Lord. At his word they shall go, and at his word they shall come in, both he and all the people of Israel with him, the whole congregation. This is where Joshua is going to be the new leader. Moses is no longer, Moses is still there. Aaron, I think it's back in Numbers 20, that's where Aaron dies because of the situation they had at Meribah, where Moses was commanded to speak to the rock, and he struck the rock, and he also said, shall we fetch you water? He didn't give God the glory as he should have. And Aaron, because of that, I think in Numbers 20, that's where God said Aaron's not going to go into the land, and to take off his. In fact, let me, to make sure I get it right, Numbers 20. I think it's Numbers 20. Numbers 20, the death of Aaron. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron and the mount by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered to his people. He shall not enter the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring him up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son. For Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. And so that's why Eleazar is now the priest in this particular situation. And then in 27, I think this is where Joshua is going to be the next leader. And so it's pointed out that, that he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire for him. So, and Joshua was a very honorable man, and I would imagine, except with the Gibeonites, and maybe there might have been other, but certainly they should have used this blessing, and I think it's a true blessing when you can find direct, which direction should we go in. Let's let God tell us. Let God be the one. And really, isn't that the way it is now? What we don't have the Urim and Thummim, but what do we have to help direct which way we should go? The Word of God, exactly. We've got the Word of God, which, if we're honest and we go in there, it might say some things. I don't. I mean, this is what the Word says. Just saying. And sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Has that been happening? Has that been rubbing? Have y'all heard anything? I am so sorry. How about if I put it there? Do we hear noise? Okay. Don't move. All right, and so then in 1 Samuel 28 and verse 6, when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him either by Urim or by the prophets. And if you remember in this situation, Saul's already been rejected by God. He spared Agag. He didn't do what he was supposed to with the Amalekites. And so he's been rejected. And now the Philistines have been gathering their forces. And so, Saul's getting pretty upset. What are we going to do? And, he tries to go to God, but God's not with him. He's already been rejected. And so if you remember, that's where he goes to that medium and pulls up. Samuel has just, I think by this time, Samuel has just passed away. I don't think he's been gone long. But Saul, through the medium, brings up Samuel. And I think that's something that God allowed in that situation. And Samuel tells him that, he's been rejected. David's going to be the one. And, the Philistines are going to, it's not going to go well for you. But I guess, Saul, if he had gotten it right to begin with early on and stayed the course, but he didn't do that. And so we see where God is like, I'm not bound to answer that way, especially by someone like Saul. And David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought the ephod to David. This might have been the one I was thinking about. So Abiathar brought the ephod to David, and David inquired of the Lord, shall I pursue after this band? Shall I overtake them? He answered him, pursue, for you shall surely overtake them and surely secure. If I remember this one correctly, this is where David had joined himself with the Philistines. This is right before the situation where they're going to attack. And but David's been there's certain Philistines said no, David's not going. So they go back to I think it's Ziklag, where the men that were with him, I'll say 600 men, and the Amalekites have gone through, burned the place, taken the wives, children, and everything gone away, and so. They're ready to stone David. I mean, the men that are with him, and so he inquires of the ephod, and so God, yes, take care of it, and I think it goes well for him. So that's that particular situation right there. These sought their registration among those enrolled in the genealogies, but they were not found there, and so they were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. The governor told them that they should not partake of the most holy food until there should be a priest to consult the Urim and Thummim. And I think in this situation, these are those who have come back from Babylonian captivity. And if you go through that, it's a whole list of folks and talking about the priest and everything. And so, they were going to make sure, we're not just going. It's not going to be just anybody who does whatever. And so they were not enrolled in I think in the New King James, I think it's registry, but genealogies, I guess they kept very detailed records. So these were not found, so we're not going to, no, you're not going to get to. But when we have a priest who can consult the Urim and Thummim, then there won't be any question about it. If God says yes, yes is yes, no is no. And so you get back and you look at the high priest there, and like I say, everything has a purpose. And then we look at the mitre of fine linen on the forehead, attached by a blue lace ribbon, a golden plate engraved "Holiness to the Lord," a constant reminder of the holiness to both the people and the priest, the crown priest, the holy crown. And so you see that on his head Aaron wore a mitre or turban made of fine linen, therefore white. On the front of the mitre was a gold plate with the words "Holy to Jehovah" engraved upon it, engraved like the engraving on a seal. It was attached to the mitre with blue lace or cord. By these words, Aaron was designated as the one who, through the offerings he made for the people, atoned for their sins. And Aaron shall bear the iniquity of the holy things which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts, that they may be accepted before Jehovah. And I'll go ahead and I'll read this because we've already seen the pictures of that. But the garments of the ordinary priests were distinctive and were also made for glory and beauty, but theirs was much simpler than those of the high priest. Theirs consisted of the linen breeches commanded for all priests, plus the coat or long tunics, which in the high priest was the innermost garment next to the linen breeches. In addition, the ordinary priest wore a colorful girdle or sash, such as the one the high priest wore around the ephod and the blue robe. For their headgear, they wore simple caps of white linen. The only break from the stark white of the ordinary priest's clothes was the colorful girdles or those sashes that they wore. And so, you go through, and like I say, everything had a purpose and a place for it. Unfortunately, today, you have religious groups. By what authority dost thou do these things? And, you see how people get so elaborate. Let me ask y'all, where do people get these ideas? Where in the New Testament does it talk about, having priests like this and set apart? I think back, when you talk about authority, and you have to have authority. And I think it's in Matthew 28 where, when Jesus is there, he's sending them out on the Great Commission. All authority has been given to me in heaven and in earth, and so he has authority. But you see around us where people do things and they do some very elaborate things. They don't have authority for it. They don't have it's just, they can read about things and they go, oh yeah, I'll go with it in that direction, but it's not right. And I'll say this, I'll throw this in there. You look back at what we've been studying, and the pattern was given to the people, and things were really spelled out. Again, like the Urim and Thummim, if you had any questions, the high priest could answer and make sure certain things were done. So it's like God covered all the bases. He covered everything that they would need, tried to set them on the right path, and they still, as we know their history, they still got off. So it's not surprising today that with God's Word, it should be spelled out. It says this or it doesn't say. If it doesn't say anything, then then you don't have authority to do whatever. And so it's not surprising that today people get way off. Any questions before we move on? All right. So now we're talking about the feast days, and I'm just going to kind of touch on these just a little bit, the feast days and such. And you see that. And what's interesting on this one, it talks about Abib, but you see Nisan there, and actually. Nisan and Abib are, I think, the same things, but I think Nisan came along after the Babylonian situation. After that, Abib is an older name, and it also means green ears of corn. And I think this is in the fall, but you see the major holidays there. Passover. Obviously, and let me go ahead and turn over to, let's see, yeah. I'll just go ahead and, let me go ahead and again, I'm just going to touch on these. I'm not going to go into any in-depth because I think, I think this will be gone into in another, when we look more closely at the laws and that kind of thing. Not a more detailed approach, so I'm not going to take away any information. But let me go ahead and read this. Just as there were specified sacrifices the people were to offer because God commanded them, there were also special times they were to observe because He commanded it. God had the right to set the rules and regulations for special times. It was man's choice to obey or disobey and experience the consequences of his choice. The Lord commanded that these are my appointed feasts, the ones the Lord has set apart, which are to proclaimed as sacred assemblies. And let me go ahead and read Exodus. We flip back over to Exodus 23. I think I meant to read this right off the Exodus 23. And I'm going to read verses 14 through 19. 23, 14 through 19. And these are talking about the annual feast. These are the ones that, let me start in verse 14. 3 times you shall keep a feast to me in the year. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread 7 days as I commanded you at the time appointed in the month of Abib. And that's where you see that Abib. Nisan, looking on this, Nisan and Abib are the same thing. For in it you came out of Egypt. None shall appear before me empty. I think that means empty-handed. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors which you have sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, which you have gathered in the fruit of your labors from the field. 3 times you shall appear. 3 times in the year, all your males shall appear before the Lord God, and you shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, nor shall the fat of my sacrifice remain in the morning. The feast, the first of the first fruits of your land you shall bring into the house of the Lord your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. So there's certain things that they were commanded to do. And so also, let's see. Notice that the women and children, it talks about the males appearing before the men. Notice that the women and children were not required to present themselves for these yearly feasts. They were welcome and did attend on most occasions because it was a time of feasting and rejoicing for the whole family. But they were not required to do so because there were times when a woman was not physically able to make the journey, or she would be unclean due to the birth of a baby or some related reason. So I think that's one of the things that you when you read that and you say the males, I'm like, well, what about the women and children? And so, but we look on here and we think Passover, and it talks about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. I think if you look at it, Passover, obviously you had Passover, and then for 7 days after that you ate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And I think the two kind of get put together. So he's like, did they forget Passover? No, Passover's there. It's all connected, if you will. God gave precise instructions on how they were to keep the Passover feast every year to remember the great night when God passed over the firstborn of the Israelites. And we could look back at the plagues, but we're not going to do that. How the Israelites ate their feast in the middle of the night. This is looking back at the very first one. The middle of the night as the firstborn of Egypt were dying. And that's back in Exodus 12. At that time, they put blood on the doorposts and the lintels at each house. And they ate the feast dressed for a journey because God had told them that they would leave the land after that plague. It all came to pass as God had predicted. The later feasts were to remember that night, but never again needed blood on their doorposts, nor did they need to eat it in a hurry, ready to leave on a journey. And so one of the things that you'll see, each family came to the feast bringing the necessary ingredients for the Passover meal. They would eat before the Lord. And one of the things I'll go ahead and tell you all this real quick because time's running out. We're going to pick up with this Wednesday. I'm going to kind of try to go over it kind of more orderly, but I thought it interesting that. And I'll go ahead and, because you see on here the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement. The Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah, actually this year is going to be this month, 9/23. And there's a business that I'm a purchasing agent, so I call it different companies. And there's this one company called Invacare. And it was recently, I think fairly recently, purchased by a Jewish individual. This man bought the company. He's trying to turn it around because they've had some issues with leadership, it seems like to me from the outside looking in. They've had some problems, but this Jewish man took it over. And I was talking to somebody on the phone very recently, and they mentioned that on the 22nd, 23rd, they have the day off. And I knew it must have been a Jewish holiday, and so that actually has to be Rosh Hashanah. And then I think they said they're going to be off a week in October. And if you look at October, the Day of Atonement is going to be on October the 2nd. Somebody might be getting married on the Day of Atonement. Yom Kippur, I think that's what if you look on the calendar, it's called Yom Kippur on the thing there. But I think they said that they're going to be off for a week. And I thought that interesting. That kind of says something to me about that individual. I don't know who he is. I don't know anything about him. But the fact that he's letting his employees off makes me think he must be somewhat religious, I would think. But if you go look at next year, because we've already passed the Passover technically on the calendar is April the 2nd. Obviously, Good Friday would be the 3rd, and then what they will call Easter. You know, that to commemorate the resurrection of Jesus, and then the Day of Pentecost, 50 days after, falls on May 24th, and so that's pretty significant. I guess we have to call it there. But one of the things I wanted to do, I kind of look, just kind of touch on these, just kind of look at these holidays very quickly. But one of the things that I want to read some passages from the New Testament that lets us know we have things, times to remember, things that are significant and important, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank y'all for y'all's kind attention.